It's time to have your say because it's time for the Q&A. Welcome to AskSCW on SCW. Could be watching on the YouTube channel on youtube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. You may also be listening on podcast format. Thank you so much for checking out the channel. Hit the follow and also go over to the YouTube channel. Subscribe as well. Let's try and build the numbers up for SCW on both YouTube and on podcast format as well. But coming up today, we've got lots on the way, lots of questions coming from you, answering your questions in the wrestling community, touching on WWE, NXT, we've got AEW, we're on the road to WrestleMania, remember, so the Elimination Chamber stops there, and of course as well, I'm recording slightly early this week, so what I decided to do at the end of the video, once I've done all the questions, I'm going to add my couple of takes from SmackDown this week as well, talking about the return of Seth Rollins, who's now the architect once again, no longer the Messiah, and also the build of the SmackDown side of the Elimination Chamber match. So those are to look forward to towards the end of the video, and there will be chapters if you're watching on YouTube. So if there's one point you want to get to perhaps quicker than others, you've got that function. You'll see it in the description. Where is what, and then you can go and just say I want to go to that bit, and you go straight to that bit now if you want to, but stick around though. I recommend sticking around. There's a lot of great questions on the way, and the first one is coming up right now from Ovi Manice, and he asks, Bianca, Belair and Edge, who are their opponents for WrestleMania? Going straight in the deep end, of course, both Royal Rumble winners, and we still don't know who they will be facing at WrestleMania. For me, I feel like with Bianca Belair, it's a foregone conclusion. We are starting to build that program with Sasha Banks, and speaking of SmackDown this past week, it looks like maybe we could be building up something of them as a tag team against Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. That could be a match we could see going forward, but I really hope neither of them become women's tag team champions at this point. I'm sick of seeing double champions first off, and second off, Bianca Belair, if she's going into WrestleMania for the championship match, she doesn't need to go for the tag team belts. For me, I want to see them perhaps maybe be in a tag team match, but maybe fall out, and it could really build to that feud, and Bianca Belair is set then on challenging Sasha Banks. That's how I would like to see that go down. As for Edge, I still believe it will be Roman Reigns at this point. The only way I feel that changes is if Randy Orton wins the Elimination Chamber match on Raw, becomes the WWE Champion. Then I can see there could be a potential swerve, a change in plans, and maybe that is what's going to happen. Finn Balor can't be ignored, still in the mix as well from NXT. There are rumours that Edge wants to work with some of the talent in NXT. I don't see it happening just yet. I think we'll get WrestleMania, the biggest match possible, the comeback story for Edge. At the moment, I still believe it will be Edge versus Roman Reigns. But hopefully, we'll see with the storylines over the next couple of weeks, and we'll have a clear indication of what the direction will be heading in to WrestleMania 37. Next question is coming from Dan the Man Williams, Mr. DWE. What do you think will be the first big match announced for WrestleMania? Great question, this one. And of course, looking at it traditionally, it's the Royal Rumble winners. It's the championship matches that you would expect to be first announced for WrestleMania. Usually main event worthy. And of course, WrestleMania is going to be on 2 nights. So, I mean, for me, at the moment, the most logic would be for one night to be headlined by one Royal Rumble winner and the next night to be headlined by the other. So, going back to the last question, I would assume that Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks would be one of them, or potentially Edge, whoever he's going to face, whether it be Roman Reigns or someone else. But I do think it will be Roman Reigns, and I think one or both of those matches will be around the same time announced as the big matches for WrestleMania this year. If I had to make a prediction right now, I'd say it's more likely going to be Edge versus Roman Reigns, but for myself personally, I'd quite like it to be Bianca and Sasha that's announced there, because I feel this match feels like a big deal very quickly, and what a token for women's wrestling that would be the first big match announced for WrestleMania. There is an outside chance that it could be Bad Bunny if he's involved. We've mentioned Bad Bunny a few times now, haven't we? His match potentially, if it is going to happen at WrestleMania, along with Damian Priest against Miz and Morrison, should Bad Bunny not be around for the whole build-up of WrestleMania, could be a potential that match could be announced first, as it's a special attraction match. You're getting that mainstream attention, and WWE would want to get that out sooner. So I think those are probably the most likely matches that will be announced first. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bad Bunny one was the first one, but I think more than likely it's going to be your Royal Rumble winners. So either Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks, or whoever Edge goes for at WrestleMania, which, as I said in the last question, I still believe will be Roman Reigns. Next question comes from Dylan Ketchum. Did you think they ruined the WrestleMania season by McIntyre defending the WWE title inside the Elimination Chamber? This is a really interesting question. I really like this one that's been given, because I would have said previously that this was not going to be something that would be in the Elimination Chamber. If you saw last week's one, completely took me from left field. I did not expect Drew McIntyre to be defending inside the chamber. I thought we are going to get Drew McIntyre against Sheamus in a one-on-one environment. This match seems going to be delayed for now, perhaps for Fastlane. It could even be the WrestleMania match, depending on how they want to go with the storytelling in WWE. So, for me personally, I would have said that beforehand it was a foregone conclusion, predictable, that Drew McIntyre would win. But I don't think it ruins the road to WrestleMania, because regardless of what happens, there could be a swerve in the works here. There could be something that we don't see coming. Maybe it's not a foregone conclusion that Drew McIntyre is the champion heading into WrestleMania. So it could be interesting. I think we have to see the Elimination Chamber match to fully give a proper answer to this. But at this particular moment, I would say that compared to now what we've got for the SmackDown Chamber, I'm much more invested in that than I am the Raw Chamber. Because when you look at it from the Raw side of things, yes, everyone's ex-world champions, but I don't feel like we're building new stars. I don't think some of the superstars were fitting for the role. I mean, you look at Jeff Hardy, for example. When's the last time Jeff Hardy had some big, meaningful victories on Monday Night Raw? I know a lot of people are a big fan of Jeff Hardy, but he's been used as a jobber in the last number of months. He doesn't really fit the role at this particular time. You can question the role of The Miz. Why does The Miz need to be in the chamber? He's got the Money in the Bank briefcase. He doesn't need to be there. So that one seems a bit bizarre as well. When you look at the other guys, they seem fitting for me, but I would have liked to have seen, rather than past champions, I would have liked to see someone like Keith Lee in there, really put a swerve in it, make me believe that maybe Keith Lee could do it on the road to WrestleMania, because I think that would be quite exciting. On the flip side, though, I'm really looking forward to that triple threat match, and it gives me my one opportunity to say about it as well. Really excited to see Keith Lee, Lashley, and Riddle in that triple threat environment. I think that could be a big, fun match. But looking at it, we'll have to wait and see. I think there's a potential we could get a swerve going on the road to WrestleMania. Perhaps maybe it's what we need. Maybe it's too predictable of Reigns and Drew both being the champion. But at the same time, I kind of feel like they're solidified as the top stars on each brand. So it would be nice to see someone come to their level. We'll have to wait and see. We'll know more after the chamber. But for me at the moment, has it ruined the road to WrestleMania? Certainly not. But has it given me some interest of what swerves could happen? Yes. Am I invested in the chamber match? I am, but I would have probably been more on board of seeing a #1 contendership chamber match rather than actually see Drew defend the title win there. Next question is coming from Lorenzo Carrillo, asking, who do you think could be AJ Styles' next feud going into WrestleMania? Is there actually a possibility Drew McIntyre could lose the WWE title at Elimination Chamber? And question 3, who would you like to see dethrone Roman Reigns for the Universal title in the future? Well, let's just finish off on Drew McIntyre, as we said in the last question. There is that potential for a swerve. So, is it a foregone conclusion Drew wins here at the Elimination Chamber? No. Is he the favourite? Probably yes, I would say so. I mean, if you look at the other contenders, Sheamus, should he win the title in the chamber, could set them two up for a one-on-one match. So, that would be interesting in that way. Randy Orton has said that rumours gone around with him potentially winning the championship. Maybe he could take on Edge at WrestleMania. That rumour has gone around this week. Wouldn't be totally surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised to see The Fiend come back either and maybe take Randy Orton out of the match. It could be interesting to see if that dynamic does happen as well. But maybe Randy versus The Fiend is the direction for WrestleMania for the championship. I'm not quite sure at this point. Looking elsewhere, AJ Styles would love to see AJ win the belt. Maybe AJ versus Edge would be pretty darn awesome. You mentioned that in the first question, but again, I don't see that one happening. But certainly, Drew could lose the belt here. It's not a foregone conclusion that Drew does retain it at the Elimination Chamber. Does he deserve to lose? Perhaps not. For the last 12 months, he's carried Raw on his back. Without him, I think Raw would have been even worse off in the ratings. Drew has been a top babyface and a top champion as well. So it would be sad to see Drew lose the belt this close to WrestleMania. He deserves to have that WrestleMania moment as champion in front of fans. So I'm not sure. Maybe I leave a bit of a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, but we'll see come Elimination Chamber time, and it gives me a great opportunity to plug as well. I'll be doing Elimination Chamber predictions coming on the channel as well on Tuesday, so make sure to go and check that when it drops on the channel this upcoming Tuesday. But you mentioned AJ Styles there. Try and have a think for the Raw roster, and I mean, if he does return, of course, he's not been very well this last week again, unfortunately. Can't seem to catch a break. It's Braun Strowman. Very sad to hear about the infection that he's got, and do wish him a very speedy recovery. He's a monster among men. He's a great attraction in a WWE ring, and that's where he belongs. I want to see him back as soon as possible. I think Braun does have a lot to offer. There's a lot of Raw potential there. He's a big guy, a former world champion. I want to see him come back, and I think he would be a great feud for the likes of AJ Styles, because yes, you've got that big and little guy dynamic, but almost in AJ Styles' corner, a big guy just like Braun, the stare down there. You kind of got that WrestleMania kind of moment vibe there going, and I think that could be a fun feud put together because AJ could almost act like the big guy who's stuck in the middle, was actually a lot smaller than both of the other two. So I think that could be a lot of fun if that program was put together. I'm trying to think of other people on the roster that it could work with. I mean, Keith Lee, if he's not involved with the United States Championship picture with Lashley, or if he's already won the belt, could be a fun match for AJ Styles. I'm not so invested with him versus Riddle. I've seen it a few times on Raw. So I think Braun would be my top choice. If Keith Lee and Lashley has already happened, which I assume that's the program that's going to be now for the US title in the long-term future, then maybe Keith Lee Styles could be if they finished off and Lashley's released to do other things. So they would be my top two choices. As for Roman Reigns, who takes down the Tribal Chief? It's hard to say at this particular time, but I don't think anyone is ready in the short term, I think is the polite answer. Edge could be the guy if he faces Roman at WrestleMania for the feel-good comeback story, but I wouldn't also see that as a long-term title change. I would say that if Edge won it on WrestleMania, I think he would lose it a few weeks later because Roman is the guy that arguably, in my opinion, he is the top guy. He's the number one, and he's someone that could build and make a new star by keeping this belt till like SummerSlam time and then losing it to somebody else. Now, who would that person be? You've got to look on SmackDown right now and say, who's got the momentum? Who started really well in 2021? And for me, you've got two names that stand out. The current Intercontinental Champion, Big E, I think has the potential to be a full-on main eventer, to be over as a main eventer. He's got the look, he's got the charisma, in-ring talent. I think Big E, at that point, say SummerSlam, I think would be a great candidate to go for Roman Reigns and win that championship. The other one I would say would be Cesaro. Cesaro for me he's red hot. He's not just hot so far in 2021. He has been winning left, right, and centre on a complete great streak. He was supposed to be in that gauntlet match on the lead to the Royal Rumble. Arguably, I don't think it's hurting that he wasn't involved in it, to be honest. He's beat Daniel Bryan twice, once by submission in the sharpshooter. Seems to be established now as a finishing move for him as well. He's won this week on SmackDown to qualify for the Elimination Chamber. Looks like perhaps a program with Seth Rollins could be on the horizon as well. Hey, if he wins that, hey, who knows? Cesaro could be the guy that we could be looking at. One other name that you could throw in the hat very quickly, I suppose, could be Jey Uso. If you want to revisit Uso versus Roman Reigns, the bloodline storyline that you have once again there, that Jey perhaps realises that, hey, look, I'm being held back and really I don't want to be doing Roman's dirty work and I could be a world champion. Hell, I am main event Jey. I'm main event Uso that's, on the main event SmackDown every single week for like 6-7 weeks towards the end of last year. It feels like the momentum's cooled off a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but I would say that wouldn't be a bad outside bet if it was to happen, but I don't really see it in the short term. I think Joseph stays where he is. I think Roman keeps his stable. I think more and more likely, if you're going to pick one there of two names, I'd say it's either Big E or Cesaro. Right now, for me, Cesaro is the one that I really want to see get there because, I mean, come on, it's Cesaro. It's a guy that should be pushed as a main eventer long before now, and it's great to see he's finally getting the opportunity. Next question has come from Noob and Co. Will NXT be involved with WrestleMania 37 this year? What did you think of Kenta in his first match in AEW, and will we see him in AEW in the future? And which champions will go into WrestleMania 37? Let's touch on the WWE questions before going on to AEW. Do I see NXT involved with WrestleMania this year? Well, WrestleMania is 2 nights, so there is the potential that maybe they could do 2 4-hour shows. There's no real need for TakeOver this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was to happen. Personally, if it is going to happen, I think it would be the NXT Championship and the NXT Women's Championship that would be involved. Of course, the Women's Championship was on WrestleMania last year, so I do think WWE would want to even out and put the Men's Championship on there this year. I mean, if you look at things, Finn Balor against Karrion Kross is the rumoured likely direction. That does feel like a WrestleMania match, doesn't it? And of course, these are the stars of tomorrow as well, and you have to look at it and say that most people will be viewing the product here. It would be great for NXT to try and get NXT's ratings up, and you see the likes of Karrion Kross, a future star of the business. For me, it does tick the boxes of why it would make sense to do it. For the women's side of things, yeah, I don't see why they couldn't do that. I mean, providing who is the champion afterwards, whether it's still Io Shirai, whether she's against Toni Storm or Raquel Gonzalez or whoever they've got lined up, they could make a fun women's match there as well. So for me, I'm down with this if they were to go down this avenue. I mean, especially Edge could still pick the NXT champion. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility. So, do I think it'll be happening? Yes. Do I think it'll be like a full takeover? No. I think it'll be one match each night if it was to go down. And I wouldn't be surprised if the winner of the Mae Young Tag Team Classic from the female side actually is involved at WrestleMania in that women's tag team championship match, whether it's a single tag team match or whether it's actually more teams involved as well. It could be a chance to give them a WrestleMania moment. Again, an opportunity for someone like, Raquel Gonzalez, Shotzi Blackheart, Dakota Kai to have a WrestleMania moment. And I don't even believe Ember Moon has had a big WrestleMania moment either. So for all of them, it'd be fantastic if they would get that opportunity. As for champions that I think could be vulnerable going into WrestleMania, or not vulnerable, I don't think Roman Reigns is losing that belt anytime soon. He is the safest champion in WWE altogether. Looking at things as well, I think Sasha Banks is safe as well. I don't see her losing the belt between now and WrestleMania. Those champions are safe. On the Raw side, I think this is where vulnerability happens. And if you'd have asked me a week ago, I would have said Drew and Asuka, I think, remain champions going into WrestleMania. But after this, we've already talked about it in this video already, Drew McIntyre, it's not a foregone conclusion. There could be a swerve. I wouldn't be surprised to see it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a swerve on Asuka. And I know that people will hate this booking idea, but remember, I'm not booking it. Lacey Evans has got a championship match against Asuka at the Elimination Chamber next Sunday. It would not be out of the realms of possibility if Lacey Evans was to win that championship and then defend it against Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 37. Now, this is not a match I want, especially after the match on Raw this past week. Both are good performers. I don't know what happened on the night, but for me, it was definitely the worst match of 2021 so far, in my personal opinion. I don't want to see him again in the singles match. I wouldn't be surprised if it was even a triple threat match with Asuka involved. At least then she's still involved in the championship picture if they do that. I really hope that doesn't happen. I really don't. I want Asuka and Charlotte or Asuka against someone else. I don't want Asuka to not be involved in the championship picture of WrestleMania. But do I see a vulnerability? Yes, I do. So of the champions, I think SmackDown is safe. Raw, I'm not so sure. We'll have to wait and see. As for Kenta, and of course, the Forbidden Doors are open. Tony Khan has said about the Forbidden Doors. They've even trademarked the Forbidden Doors now, and it's been said as well in Impact Wrestling this week. It really screams that Tony Khan, AEW, wants to work with talents from all over, whether it's Impact Wrestling, whether it's New Japan Pro Wrestling. He said, hell, who can we get in next? Could Ring of Honor be next involved? We've had NWA already also. Maybe MLW. Who knows what is going through with AEW? So that Forbidden Door is open. So is it Kenta's last performance in AEW? I'm not so sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to come perform again at some point in the near or later future. As for his performance on the show, I thought the main event, the tag team match, was absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Kenta and Omega against Moxley and Archer. Falls Count Anywhere was a great, fun match. Really put together. Went all over Daily's place. Hell, there was blimmin' potatoes being used. That was great fun to watch. For me, I don't know, AEW have a great way of just booking fun wrestling shows, and this main event was a lot of fun to watch. And the fact that you had the outside element of, the #1 contender for the New Japan Pro Wrestling IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship, which is held by an AEW roster member in John Moxley there, Kenta being on that show, the fact that Impact Tag Team Champions were involved in that finish as well, for me, just superb. Lots of elements, lots of twists and turns, potentials of where it can go from here. The Forbidden Doors are open. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised what happens anywhere at any point. And that is an exciting feeling to have with AEW, because this is what we used to get back in the 90s in the Monday Night Wars. You didn't know from one week to the next what was going to happen. It was shock value. It was shock TV. It's something that you kind of felt, I think this will happen, but all of a sudden something would completely change. The rug would be pulled from beneath your feet and something different would be happening. It could be, anything. It could be from, a storyline change, or more than likely you could see a big swerve and superstars going from one show to the other. You could see Rick Rude, who was on a pre-recorded edition of Raw, turning up live on WCW on the same time that both shows are being broadcast. Rick Rude was actually on 2 different wrestling shows at the same time, where he defected from WWE to WCW, which was a big shocking back in '97. The fact as well that you look and say that Chris Jericho's iconic debut, the Millennium Bug, the Y2J thing, of course, had gone and defected from WCW to WWE. The Radicals, another fine example as well in the year 2000 with Benoit, Guerrero, Saturn, Malenko, all leaving WCW, sitting in the crowd on Raw, and then coming in as those Radicals to feud with DX. There were so many magical moments, and that's what AEW really gives with that Forbidden Door. So I'm really excited to see where it's going to lead to next. But hopefully we'll see Kenta back at some point. I was really happy to see him there. Great performance, great match, great main event. AEW, you can probably tell, it's ticking all the boxes for me of late. 3 more questions now from Noob and Co. Which matches do you want Meiko Satomura to have in WWE? Do you think Karrion Kross is going after the NXT Cruiserweight title? And do you think MJF is breaking up the Inner Circle from the inside? First up, I'll touch on Karrion Kross. No, I think he just wants some dominance, really. I think he wants to show someone like Santos Escobar is kind of like a power player in NXT. Despite the fact he's in the Cruiserweight division, he's a leader of a stable. He's been dominant. Much winning streak he's had in NXT. I don't remember the last time he lost a match. I think this is just a way of putting Karrion Kross over. It's something for him to do in the meantime, building up to the NXT title match. It probably shows that there is a little bit of a hole somewhere in that mid-card of NXT. Perhaps maybe someone like Bronson Reed should have filled this role, but maybe they feel at the moment someone like Santos Escobar, who's been on such a winning streak, would be more suitable for Karrion Kross to get a victory over on his road back to trying to go for the NXT Championship. He's not in the same weight class. He just can't go for that Cruiserweight Championship. As for Meiko Satomura, I'm really excited to see her in NXT UK. Obviously, Kaylee Ray is going to be the most likely one to go for the NXT UK Women's Championship. Perhaps she could even be the one to dethrone her. There's many talented women actually on that roster I'd like to see, whether it's the likes of Ginny, Piper Niven, Zaya Brookside. They've got a very talented roster on the NXT UK side of things. But of course, there are dream matches on the other side of the pond on NXT and on the main roster. Of course, I would really like to see Io Shirai. I would really like to see Asuka in matches there. Kind of like with Meiko Satomura, I think with Asuka, it's kind of like now versus the legend. But I really like the idea of Io Shirai against Meiko because, of course, it's now like the legend against the future. Even though Io Shirai technically is the now, that passing of the torch of NXT versus NXT UK, for me, that match really excites me. So for me, that would be the one I'd want to see the most. But there's lots of potentials there. She's a great in-ring competitor, and you could name, if there's a great women's wrestler in WWE, doesn't matter which roster she's on, I'd like to see her in the ring with Meiko Satomura. I mean, it doesn't matter. It could be Sasha Banks, it could be Bayley, Tony Storm, you name it. I want to see all the matches because, I think we're in for some real gems over the next few months and years in WWE. As for the Inner Circle, yes, it looks like it. That MJF has been, meddling his way, and he's been actually trying to get the Inner Circle to turn on Sammy Guevara. It seems like that's happened now that Sammy has quit the Inner Circle. Seems he wants time away from Daily's place as well. I thought it was very interesting because what's going to happen with Sammy in the meantime? Could they actually do a transitional period where Sammy actually goes and has a change of scenery, goes to Impact Wrestling for like a couple of months? That'd be bloody awesome. I'd really like to see that. That'd be a fun twist of storytelling if they wanted to do that. But I think more than likely he's going to be kept off television. I don't see him being around for the time being. I see MJF and Chris Jericho going for them tag team championships. I see them being unsuccessful. I see MJF, of course, continuing to talk to the other members of the Inner Circle. You've seen with Hager. Wardlow, of course, is already on his side. And you've got Santana Ortiz. I think MJF is going to kidnap a lot of them. I think they're going to take Chris Jericho out of the mix, and I think that it's going to be the leader is going to be taken out. We'll probably get MJF versus Jericho, and then we'll probably get, Le Sex Gods come back together. We'll probably get Sammy and Jericho. Jericho seeing the error of his ways, the mistakes he made by putting MJF in that stable against MJF and Wardlow somewhere further down the line, and perhaps the whole of the Inner Circle would implode over the course of this year. But it's an exciting storyline. I'm really enjoying it. I think it's playing out slowly. Sometimes it's a bit too slow, but you know what? I like the subtle hints they've got in there. This week was a big moment they've done that, and I'm looking forward to see where it's going to go from here. I think that there's a lot of potential for this storyline, and MJF, as we said, it always felt a bit dodgy from the start, him going in the Inner Circle. Inner Circle needs to break up, in my opinion. They've been together too long. Some members have been a bit held back, in my opinion. Proud and Powerful, particular. I think it's a tag team that deserves to be in and around that main event area. They're going to get the opportunity on Dynamite this week, ironically, as I make this comment now, but they'll go back into the background afterwards. They won't win the championships. So it would be good to see if they could actually build themselves a program, become the #1 tag team without using the Inner Circle. I think there certainly would be potential for that to be there. And Sammy Guevara, now he's broken away, can become a top babyface in the company as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him as TNT champion before the end of 2021. Next question comes from Saprit of Slam Hub Wrestling. There has been a lot of debate when it comes to a big draw in modern wrestling. With that in mind, which wrestler do you personally think is bigger than the promotion he or she is affiliated with? This is a really good question. Thank you so much for this one. I really like this question because wrestling has gone through those eras where people arguably are bigger than the companies. I mean, you look at WWE's history, Hulk Hogan back in the 80s, you would have argued Ric Flair as well for NWA when he went to WWF back at the time. That was a big loss for NWA, WCW when that happened, and they really suffered without Flair for that time being. And of course then, when both of them were actually in WCW, you saw that with WWF at the time, they had to build the new stars, and they actually lost their biggest people, and they were losing the ratings war. Had to build the likes of Steve Austin, The Rock. We've had Cena, we've had Orton. Now we're trying to do it with Roman Reigns. It's been a lot of eras like that throughout history where superstars have been the draw for their company. Looking at things now in WWE, I'd argue Roman Reigns is the one, but I would say with WWE, I don't think anybody makes that major difference. I think Reigns does, if anybody, but I look at the ratings right now in WWE. No one is drawing in that way. They haven't got their next Cena or Austin or Hogan. They're lacking them at the moment. They need to build those new stars up to really sort of make that happen. And it's going to take time to do that as well. So it's hard to really give an answer from a WWE standpoint. But what I would say is when I look towards AEW, I do see superstars that do make a difference. And despite the fact that he's perhaps he's more, let's say, advanced stage of his career, I think Chris Jericho is a big draw for AEW. When he's on AEW Dynamite, it outdraws anything NXT does. Anyone that opposes Chris Jericho when it comes to NXT is a losing segment. So I would say that Jericho, even though Jericho right now, I'd say in the future, won't be the reason. And I think Dynamite will hold their ratings because he's been there long enough. AEW have been very clever with the way that they've booked their superstars. Chris Jericho, ideally, like I say, is that draw. Jon Moxley, arguably again, without those stars, without Kenny Omega, without the Young Bucks, it's not quite what it is. But those superstars are helping to build the stars of tomorrow. And of course, they're going through a very clever cycle right now where Jericho was the guy to begin with. He passed the torch to Moxley. Moxley carried on. Was champion for a dominant, near enough, 10 months he was. Passed the torch to Omega. And Omega kind of lost a bit of steam, you would have said, in AEW at the starting point. Now Omega's the champion. Now it's time to really look at those stars of tomorrow. And you look at them stars of tomorrow, I would turn and say that we could get one of them as your next champion. So I would say Hangman Page should be your next AEW champion, should be the one to dethrone Kenny Omega, because the way he's been booked and the way he's been done, he's not too far off from getting to that top level. I think he's still looking for a couple of years for the likes of MJF, who I think will be doing it eventually. Look at maybe Darby Allin, Jungle Boy. There are those stars there, Sammy Guevara. There are people there that can go to the forefront. But right now, AEW has relied on using their legends, Sting perhaps being another one, to try and get those ratings in, to try and get those draws to help, then push their younger, newer stars, which is how you build a wrestling company where, in sort of 5 years' time, especially when Jericho probably isn't performing, Sting won't be around, people will still be sticking around because they want to know what happens with these newer generations. So I would argue and say that Chris Jericho is particularly definitely one I would answer for you there. For Impact Wrestling, again, I don't see it again for the same reasons, but I would say perhaps you could argue that Anderson and Gallows are probably the ones that I would give for Impact Wrestling, because right now they're spending a lot of time on Dynamite as well. They are spending time on Impact, but they will be in New Japan also. But I would argue and say that was a big capture for Impact Wrestling at the time, because you can see that there is, want and desire for other companies to use their services also. Next question coming from Straight Edge Josh. With Lars Sullivan being released, do you reckon the Velveteen Dream will be canned? Controversial question, this one, but I like it that it's come in. I mean, Velveteen Dream hasn't been on TV now for quite a while, and he's only won 2 matches, I believe, since April last year. That's horrendous in-ring record, and of course, since that speaking out movement and the controversial claims that were given about Velveteen Dream coming to the public eye, yeah, a lot of things have been soured on Velveteen Dream, and I'd say it doesn't look good for him. Of course, with Lars Sullivan, there was a lot of controversy going with him. He was quietly released from WWE. It wasn't really made big, publicised that he'd been released from his contract. It sort of came out via reports a few weeks later. I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing did happen to Velveteen Dream. I would turn around and say, if there's going to be another round of cuts this year, I wouldn't be surprised to see it, because despite the fact that Velveteen Dream has a lot of raw potential and had, a couple of years ago, a lot of people were calling and saying this was going to be your future star of the business. Unfortunately, if all of the stuff has been said, if there is truth in it, then obviously the personality doesn't match the performer. So for me, looking at it, I mean, of course, there are allegations. We don't know if they're true or not, but of course, you have to say that the Velveteen Dreams stock has been severely damaged in the last sort of, 8-9 months or so. as I say, if there's another round of cuts from WWE, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 3 to 6 months we find out, and even perhaps not even the second it's done, but maybe a few weeks down the line, that maybe Velveteen Dream is not with WWE anymore. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if that was to happen. Next question comes from my good friend Mr. 1925. Is anyone ever going to address why Sheamus walks around backstage with his fists taped up, then he's actually scheduled to fight, and he comes to the ring with the tape off? I feel these tiny nuances are the things driving intelligent, casual fans away from wrestling. His backstage attire is great looking, but let's make it functional. It's a really good question, this one. It's a really good point made as well, because, like you say, sometimes it's the little things that actually make things not connect and not work together. Because like you say, Sheamus, he's got a great look backstage, and then he has to be all sports entertainer, not fighter, coming to the ring. Which we're used to seeing fighters back in the day. People would take their fists up. They would try and protect themselves to not get hurt in any form of way. And Tape would do that, gloves or whatever, to try and help themselves. But no, he comes around to the ring, like you say, with the fists taped off. Why would he do such a thing? And it's these little things, like you say, that are driving people away. Like you say, it can be not just that, it could be in characters. Someone's character in the ring, not just ring attire. Could be in storylines. It's those tiny little details that are the things that make the bigger picture lack sense. And I think, like you said there, it is those things that drive intelligent fans away, and why I think some people get so infuriated with the product. I just think it's a fantastic point you make. There's not much more I can add to it. I think that there is a lot of it here in WWE that happens throughout the shows. It's not just Sheamus. Like I say, you see it in the angles and storylines going on. You see it with characters as well. Why we have to see people do 100 flips and stuff. Why we can't see a bit more tweak to the character, more involvement from things, and character and storyline and everything going together. Just makes things a lot better, a lot more functional, a lot more sense. I'd like to see the Sheamus that we see backstage. That's how he should fight in the ring. He should become dressed to fight. That's what Sheamus is. He loves to have a good fight. He likes to drink a pint, have a fight. That's what he does. Instead, he comes all sports entertaining, his little speedos to the ring. The fist tape is off. I agree with you. I think that we need to keep things where it's functional, it makes sense, and it works. On the flip side, I do think Sheamus is doing some of the best work of his career. His character work has been fantastic, but I would agree, I like the backstage look. They should introduce that to the in-ring side of things as well. Personally, I think it would be the right move to do. Like I say, that little tweak that can just keep people connected with what is going on. Last question this week comes from George Jones. If you was booking Xia Li, Boa and Tian Sha, how would you book it, and would this lead to a stable? Really good question, this one. I really have enjoyed the dynamic of what they've done with this. With the Tian Sha thing, I would say perhaps it's a bit silly that she's meant to be 1,000 years old, but I like the brutality. I like the fact that Boa and Xia Li have had to, almost get themselves, when they're impervious to pain, this different demeanour and dimension to how they are presented when they come to the ring. We spoke about in the last question, those tweaks that you can make things better. They've done that with Xia Li. Xia Li feels much more creditable when you see it in ring now. I like the dynamic of what they've done with her. I'm not such a fan of what they've done with Boa in a way, because of the fact he did have that dynamic as well, but he was, he was made to look quite weak this past week on NXT. What I would say is, from storyline perspective, I don't mind with what they've done actually on NXT. I like the connection of what they've done here with Kaden Carter and Casey Catanzaro, because they were friends with Xia Li, and it's a great starting block to do here to get this rivalry going on with that, because you can establish this as the heel stable. It is the fear factor of Tian Sha. She is the leader, the head of the pack. It's almost like going to the head of the table, isn't it? She is the head of the pack, but with Xia Li, she has to now prove her allegiance to all the training she got, that she is dedicated and that she is sticking to the course here to make this stable as what it is, and the fact that she's not going to go back to her old, arguably weak ways. And we'll probably get some matches between Xia Li in a singles environment between, Casey Catanzaro, Kaden Carter. May even get a tag team match. We may even get Tian Sha in the ring. And I think she ultimately has to be, she's presented as the one that everyone fears. Everyone's scared the life out of her. Even Wade Barrett, he really sells and says, I want nothing to do with her. I'm not interviewing her, not doing nothing. And I think she's obviously going to be the one portrayed in the short term as the lead. Obviously, she's the leader, but she's going to be presented as the in-ring competitor, the one that's probably impervious to pain. We get these sort of like monster-like gimmicks, if you want, and she's going to be that one. Xia Li is the one in second place here, and it's going to be a while before she can push herself and break through. But you can have that stable. You can perhaps get Tian towards the NXT Championship picture. We need to get Boa in the ring here, but I can see him playing bodyguard for a lot of this storyline play out. It is good for the women's division, and maybe somewhere longer term you can build where Xia Li, you know, she's been under the influence, but she can see maybe the wrongdoing that she's doing. She can build herself away, builds a program with Tian and Xia Li, and Xia Li builds herself up then to become top of the pack and ends up going off on her own and perhaps can go for the NXT Women's Championship, because at that point she may be, you know, at that sort of level on the roster, where right now you can see with that stable, despite the fact they've come in, they've got an interesting story going on. They're still at the very bottom of the lineup right now, going against Casey and going against Caden. You know, yes, they did well to get to the semi-finals of the Dusty Women's Tag Team Classic, but they're nowhere near the NXT Women's Championship pitch. They're not even consideration. So this is definitely a lower card feud right now, and that's the way perhaps maybe as a stable they can work together and build themselves up towards the top of the NXT Women's ranks. As promised then, that's the Q&A completed this week, but if you wanted to know my thoughts on SmackDown this week, I'm going to give them to you right now. Of course, we had the show kicking off with Roman Reigns, Adam Pearce in the ring together. Of course, Paul Heyman and Jey Uso work with Roman Reigns. We were supposed to have Roman defending the championship inside the Elimination Chamber. That's not going to happen. Paul Heyman using some fantastic lines of saying that Roman Reigns is not going to be doing this. You don't put Roman in the chamber. You do what Roman wants. Roman doesn't do what you want. And the fact is as well that what you're going to do, you're going to fire Roman Reigns this close to WrestleMania. WrestleMania had the lowest attendance in history without Reigns last year. You need him on the show this year. I thought that was great storytelling, great way that was put together. And the fact is now we've got 6 superstars that went through qualifying matches, or 4 of them had to go through qualifying matches to get themselves into the chamber. The winner of that 6 Elimination Chamber match then will take on Roman Reigns later in the evening, which of course keeps Roman looking strong, keeps that Tribal Chief storyline going on very, very well. So I'm quite liking the direction. I thought it was very clever. I like the fact that the 2 people that didn't have to qualify made logical sense. Kevin Owens, of course, still has, you know, the beef going on with Roman Reigns, and it would protect Kevin Owens again if he was to get in that environment. I can't say that necessarily I would 100% want that match to go down one more time, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. The other one that got the automatic qualification was Jey Uso, which, you know, Roman Reigns, you could argue and say that maybe he should be annoyed that Jey Uso's in there, but I think he'll look at CJ and think, you're going to do my dirty work. I think that's what he's probably thinking. He's going to soften everybody up, and you should hopefully win that match for the family, and then afterwards maybe we can have the dynamic where Roman says, look, when it comes to the pay-per-view, you're going to lay down. You're going to, you know, I'm just going to have a night off here. You're going to win that chamber match. I don't even have to defend the championship. And if you go for it, all I have to do is just put one foot on you and just put the 1, 2, 3. Really throw that dynamic in there. It could really throw question marks of Jey Uso as well if he wants to be involved with this once again. Going for the qualifying matches, of course, we had King Corbin and Sami Zayn defeat Rey Mysterio and, of course, his son Dominic. This was thrown together backstage by, of course, Sonya Deville, who's the assistant to the not GM, the WWE official Adam Pearce. I like the fact Adam Pearce has been very undermined here because Roman Reigns stared down Adam Pearce. Sonya Deville, actually this week, has done twice, put stuff together, which Adam Pearce wasn't. She's shown herself to be a more complete GM. After what's gone on Raw this week with Shane McMahon's return, which, of course, not really had the opportunity to discuss on this channel, felt he was a bit undermining with Adam Pearce. AJ Styles was as well. Wonder if we get the storyline that's going to come together with Adam Pearce if he's being undermined, and maybe we could see maybe affected on one or even both shows. We could see GMs brought back, perhaps that could be something that could go on. But Sonya Deville, she's proving herself to be quite handy in this GM role. I'm quite enjoying her role after initially thinking, well, what's going to happen with this should she have come back to the ring. She's got herself a nice little slot here. She's making herself appearances in throughout the show. I think she's doing pretty well, and maybe this could be something that could really build Sonya Deville becoming, a big-time competitor when she eventually does get back into the ring. But of course, as I said, we've got Sami Zayn and we've got King Corbin in the chamber. Later on in the evening, Daniel Bryan and Cesaro beat, of course, the Dirty Dogs of Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler. So we've got a nice little lineup there of those 6 superstars. We'd like to say Cesaro, we've got Daniel Bryan, we've got King Corbin, we've got Sami Zayn, Jey Uso and Kevin Owens. I think it sounds awesome lineup. Really looking forward to that chamber match. Should be really exciting. I like the fact that the old school go down to finish off the show as well. I love the fact that we had all the finishers, everyone beating up, and of course Kevin Owens had that Steve Austin-like from the Attitude Era. His music hits, comes and stuns everybody. I thought it was a great way to close off that show. I thought it was a really good way to finish. But looking at elsewhere as well, Seth Rollins' return I think is another big talking point on there. Arguably a little bit hit and miss for me, but I like the fact he come out to his old entrance music. They played as if he was going to be a babyface. He was the architect once again, not the Messiah. The ring was surrounded by both faces and heels. Obviously, everyone perhaps very pleased to see him back. It did seem a bit weird that everybody was there, but perhaps it's seen as that big of a deal. People wanted to know what he had to say. Maybe he changed. He said he felt changed now, becoming a parent from fatherhood. But actually, he says he wants to be a mentor to the roster. He wants to make SmackDown even greater through his vision. It's all about the architect vision that he's got. And of course, everybody thought, not for me. Everyone walked towards the back. One that stayed around was Cesaro, and Cesaro says, "You've not changed." Seth Rollins blew a gasket, seeing that everyone had left and that Cesaro was leaving, made an attack on Cesaro. One thing that I would say is a big saving grace is that Cesaro versus Seth Rollins, sign me up. I want to see it. I think that would be an awesome match if that was to go down. So for me, I would really want to see that one. Should that be booked perhaps maybe for Fastlane, maybe heading into WrestleMania. I wouldn't be surprised at this point. Really enjoyed as well. Fun tag team match with Street Profits. And of course we had also the Alpha Academy with Chad Gable. It's good to see Chad getting TV time. The guy is so good in the ring. I want to see him in a match with Daniel Bryan at some point. Bloody hell, put it on pay-per-view. It'd be awesome to see. So for me, that one needs to go down at some point. But no, fun tag team match. Street Profits picking up the victory, probably leading to them against Rude and Ziggler somewhere further down the line. And I want to give a shout out as well. I do think that it's deserved here for the Big E Apollo Crews segment at this week. I think that Big E saying that of course he wanted to defend the Intercontinental Championship, but actually it wasn't against Apollo Crews. Apollo coming out saying that he is not giving up on the Intercontinental Championship. He will be the one to take it from Big E. Big E saying that you need to go back to catering. I beat you twice was a really killer line, especially the fact that neither of them had microphones. It was sort of just being said face to face. It felt very personal. You felt the anger that was going through Apollo Crews. I think the character of Apollo Crews, this heel turn that's coming, really is evolving nicely. The fact we got Big E and Shinsuke Nakamura on TV as well, thought it was a pretty fun match. So I was really pleased to see that. It did get a false finish. Of course, Apollo Crews costing the opportunity there, but Apollo Crews feels like kind of that heel turn coming. As I say, no one's going to get that championship. He wants it. But the program with him and Big E, a lot of fun. Really enjoying it. And last but not least, we'll just quickly mention Bayley defeating Liv Morgan. I want to see more of Liv Morgan in the SmackDown ring. We don't see enough of it. I think she's got a good performance. I enjoyed the match with Bayley. The fact as well we have Billie Kay, who again costing the Right Squad matches left, right and centre. It's shocking to see that she's still getting involved here. She's usually a very fun part of SmackDown. Billie Kay was more low-key this week, but I thought it was a solid match with Bayley and Liv Morgan, so I want to give a shout out to that match as well. But I thought SmackDown was good overall this week. I'm going to give the show a 7 out of 10. I think it was a worthy show, and yeah, this is just my quick hot takes on SmackDown from this week. So if you enjoy this, this is almost a sample to see if you want me to do hot takes or quick opinions on the show's Raw and SmackDown going forward. So this is a tester right here. If you like this, let me know in the comments below, and they will get their own individual videos. So let me know. This is a testing point today. We're putting this towards the end of the video, especially as well this week. Those I've done this straight after SmackDown. The recording is not on the usual Sunday, so we've not had the chance to get SmackDown questions in. So I thought I'll take the opportunity and I'll try something out. And I thought I'd see what you guys let me know in the comments below if you want to see more of it or if you're happy with the content we've currently got. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching Ask SCW as always. Hope you've enjoyed it, whether you've been watching on YouTube or you've been listening on podcast form. And of course, as I say, likes and comments really do help the channel grow. So please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the show today. I look forward to interacting with you in the comment section on YouTube. And of course, as well, hit 800 subscribers as well. Thank you so much to everyone that's supporting the channel. Please go and follow us on your podcast platforms as well. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. Let's see now if we can get towards 900 is the next big goal. But of course, as I'm recording this right now, it is actually Saturday as I'm recording it. I'm going to release it on Saturday as well, so there's still time to go and check out Impact Wrestling's No Surrender. Of course, that show is this evening. I've got my predictions video up for you now, as well as NXT TakeOver. Of course, Vengeance Day. Those predictions are on the channel as well. A review will be coming on Monday. And also, I've been very fortunate to be on Jonesy Chats Wrestling twice this week, discussing Raw and SmackDown full in depth. If you want to know my full opinions, then go to Jonesy Chats Wrestling now on YouTube. Give him a sub as well. He's on the road to 50 subscribers, and yeah, you can get my thoughts fully on Raw and SmackDown through segment throughout the entire of those shows. So you can go and check those out as well. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a great day. Take care. All the best. You've been watching or listening, depending where you are, to SCW. Take care. Have yourselves a great day.